FPL Game Week 3 transfer targets. Today we're going to go through all the players hopefully you are considering buying into your FPL teams this week. A few other players that you might not be considering, and we'll discuss them. We'll talk about their fixtures, talk about their data, whether you should be buying them going into Game Week 3 or not. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And we're having a look at those Game Week 3 transfer targets all across the pitch. There are benchings, there are injuries, there are transfer rumours. We're going to go through it all and have a look at some of the players I'm sure you are considering buying into your teams for Game Week 3. And then maybe a few other players as well. Before we do that, this video I do every week uses a lot of data, and it all comes from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. If you are interested in checking it out, there is a link in the description. They are still offering discounts as we go into the start of the season. I do use it to track my team throughout the week. I use it to make decisions. I read articles on it. It's fantastic. If you want to have a look, it is in the description. But we're going to start off by talking about goalkeepers, because a lot of us started with either Jordan Pickford or Dean Henderson, both of which look like pretty poor decisions at the moment. Now, there are 3 goalkeepers that I am looking at for my team, and I spoke about them in my transfer plans video, and I still think they are the 3 most relevant at the moment. The first is Martinez of Aston Villa. 5 million. The Aston Villa fixtures look great. We'll talk about their defence in a moment. There could be a little bit of rotation there, so he feels like the most nailed one. They do have pretty good underlying numbers historically for defensive data, and again, when there is Champions League, you might not get certainty of starts from all of their defenders. Next up is Sells at Nottingham Forest. Now, just before we talk about this, there are still slight rumours of Nottingham Forest going in for another keeper. The transfer window does shut on Friday evening before the Game Week 3 deadline. So, going into the Game Week 3 deadline, we will know if Nottingham Forest have signed a goalkeeper or not. And if they do, then of course Sells is unlikely to be an option, because it might be a Ramsdale or something like that comes in. But if they don't, 4.5 million for Sells, given the run of fixtures that they do have, I do still really like as an option. I almost went with him in Game Week 1. I didn't, because I thought there was a risk that they'd sign another keeper. And if they don't, I will massively regret not going with him, because I do like their online data and their start to the season, and the fixtures still look really, really nice. Of course, they kept a clean sheet in Game Week 2. Didn't quite keep one in Game Week 1, but they conceded 1 goal, and it was very, very late on. So I do still like that. And then, of course, David Raya. If you're not planning on playing a wildcard for a long time, then I really like Raya. Of course, the next 3 of Brighton, Spurs and Man City are not the best. I maybe expect 1 clean sheet in there, but I continue to doubt them in difficult games, and they continue to get clean sheets. Although Ollie Watkins has a lot to answer for. I think he owns double or triple Arsenal defence in his FPL team, or he wants Arsenal to win the league and not Man City, because he absolutely should have wiped out that clean sheet in Game Week 2. But still, as a long-term keeper, Raya is really nice. But if you do plan on a Game Week 6-7 wildcard and are looking for a new keeper, Sells and Martinez are probably the 2 that I'd look at. Now, to have a look at the Arsenal defence, so we spoke about David Raya as a goalkeeper option. There are other defenders that you could look at. First of all, to cover off people asking about the left back, I still think that Zinchenko, Timber and Calafiori will all share minutes, particularly when Champions League does start. So I know you'll look at it and say, well, Timber started Game Week 2 and he's cheaper than the others, so I might go there. He's absolutely worth paying the extra 0.5 million to buy Saliba or Gabriel. To be honest, I'd probably go with them over Ben White. I still think there's a little bit of goal threat from both Saliba and Gabriel. They're pretty good for bonus points as well. At the moment, I'm not certain Ben White has shown that he's worth the extra 0.5. But if you want to take a gamble on it, we saw at the end of last season what he's capable of doing. Again, at the moment with the next 3 fixtures, they're probably not priority buys. But if you're uncertain what defender to buy and you have the money for an Arsenal one and you plan on having your wildcard probably Game Week 8 or later, then absolutely go and buy them, because from Game Week 6 onwards, the fixtures of Leicester at home, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, they could easily keep 3 clean sheets in them, and it feels like a minimum of 2. I've already got Gabriel in my team, and from that run onwards, I'm almost certainly going to be looking at a double up. Saliba or Raya will almost guarantee to be coming in my team about that time as well. So don't be put off by the fixtures, because over the next 5, despite playing Spurs and Man City, they'll probably keep more clean sheets than any other team in the league anyway. And I doubted them in Game Week 2 and bench Gabriel, and look where that got me. Luckily, I was enough to get some points from my other defenders. But if you need defenders and you've got the money, just don't be put off by Arsenal unless you're going to wildcard in Game Week 6. And then we looked at Aston Villa and Martinez as well to discuss a little bit of their defence. So there is a little bit of uncertainty exactly what's going to happen with their defence, because Matty Cash sounds like he might be out for a fair few games as well. To start off at left back, Luca Dean and Maatsen feel like absolute no-goes. At time recording in, Maatsen is 5 million, but he might drop to 4.9 by the time I release this. At the moment, it is Dean starting. But when Champions League comes, could it be Maatsen in the Champions League? Could it be Maatsen in the Premier League, Dean in the Champions League? Maatsen does actually have Champions League experience with Dortmund, so maybe they go with Maatsen in the Champions League and Dean in the Premier League. We basically don't know, so I wouldn't go there. At right back, it does look like it's going to be Nedeljkovic going in as their right back, because he's the one who came on for Matty Cash when he picked up an injury. However, we all know at the end of last season that they played Konza at right back for a fair few amount of games. Now, at the moment, they don't have a wealth of options at centre back to play if Konza was to play right back. However, Tyrone Mings is likely to be back in not too many games for them. So it's possible that Nedeljkovic plays a few games, but then we see Konza at right back with Mings and Pau Torres coming in at centre back. Pau Torres and Konza are absolutely the ones I'd go with. If you have a 4 million and you want to go to Nedeljkovic because you can't afford a 4.5, that's absolutely fine. But it does come with a slight bit of risk. They could play Konza at right back in some of the games. I do think in these easier fixtures, they will favour going with the attacking fullback in Nedeljkovic, who did play pretty well during pre-season, but just have a little bit of word of caution that you could lose out on minutes here or there. Pau Torres and Konza both look really great. If I was actually buying one, I'd probably just favour Pau Torres. His attacking threat is slightly better, and his passing ability over the top to the likes of Watkins, Rodgers, and Leon Bailey also looks really, really strong. So I like the defenders a lot, and from game week 3, we know their fixtures look really nice, so definitely defenders to look at a cheap price if you can't afford the Arsenal ones. Now, staying at Aston Villa, we're going to look at Morgan Rodgers, who is 5 million still, and looks certain to be 5.1 million by the time this video probably goes up. And we said with the Villa fixtures, they look great. And if you've watched Aston Villa over the first couple of games, you will know that Morgan Rodgers looks like the best player on the pitch, let alone for both teams, let alone for Aston Villa. He looked like the best midfielder on the pitch playing against Arsenal. His ball carrying was fantastic. He did get into a couple of final third positions. Maybe the decision making was not quite as good. But if Watkins finished that chance and he got an assist against Arsenal, this would be the most transferred in player going into game week 3. I'm almost certain of that. He looks like he's going to play a lot of minutes as well. I think the big concern was how many minutes is he going to play. He played 90 minutes in both game weeks 1 and game week 2 and looked like the best player, as I said, against Arsenal. If you're looking for a cheap midfielder, you can look at Smith-Rowe, who we'll talk about in a moment. But if you don't have the money for that and you want a player just to play in your team most weeks, I look at the next 6 fixtures. You can play Rodgers pretty much every single week there. I am a big, big fan, and I'm very happy that I've got him in my team already. Next up, slightly more expensive. We're going up to 6.5, and it is Gibbs-White at Nottingham Forest. Now, we've seen Alanga and Hudson-Odoi at 5.5 be good options, but not that great to start the season, it seems so far. Up front, Chris Wood, but they are still linked with forwards. Taiwo Awoniyi might get minutes. Gibbs-White is the one that feels nailed out of all the attackers, playing a lot of minutes, and he's like to be on penalties as well. The upcoming fixtures for Nottingham Forest do look really nice. He plays a lot of minutes. That's the reliable thing you get with him. Penalties as well. So as a potential Nkunku replacement, there are a few other options that we can talk about, but I still really like Gibbs-White. I'm looking at him potentially as an option to come into my midfield in that role. They've got Wolves at home, Brighton away, Fulham at home, Palace at home in the next 6 fixtures as well. Of course, he scored in game week 2 and picked up bonus points as a result. 0.32 XGI per 90 is not been fantastic. Predicted points are still a little bit mixed, but it is the reliable route into that Forest attack, who do look pretty good at the moment. Next up, a very popular pick in Noni Madueke of Chelsea. Of course, he scored the hat-trick with his start in game week 2, having played 0 minutes in game week 1, and now is one of the most popular transfers in going into game week 3. Of course, the Chelsea fixtures from this week out look fantastic. A lot of us looking at Cole Palmer, but can't quite afford him and do want a piece of that Chelsea attack, and you can potentially look and Noni Madueke. To talk a little bit about his minutes, I do think he should start. I'm a big fan of Noni Madueke. I thought he should stay at Chelsea. I expect him to get a lot of minutes, and I do think he's a very direct, explosive player, and I am excited to see what he can do in a Chelsea shirt this season. Now, there will be Europa Conference League coming up at some point for Chelsea around game week 6, but I still think that he will likely be in that first choice lineup. He links up so well with Cole Palmer. We've seen it at the end of last season, and we've seen it at the start of this season. I can't really put you off, even if he only plays 4 of the next 5 and he comes on for 30 minutes in the other one. I do think we're pretty reliable. Maresca has spoken highly of him, said he's the type of winger that he really likes, and we saw him thrive in that game against Wolves. Now, I'm not expecting him to score a hat-trick every single week, and there's not a certainty he starts all of the next 5, but at his price at 6.5, he's very explosive, and I do expect him to do well. If you've looked at him, you've already bought him, I feel like he's going to rise in price at least once before the deadline as well again. And then another goal scorer in game week 2 was Smith-Rowe. He was the big 5.5 million option going into the start of the season, and he is definitely delivering. Finished his chance very well in game week 2, and the fixtures coming up continue to look really, really nice. Fulham look great going forward as well. We'll talk about Muniz in a moment, who I still think is a good player to buy. You've also got Iwobi and Traore, both who got returns in game week 2 as well. I don't think they're bad picks, but I just look at Smith-Rowe's goal scoring record and the way he finished his chance in game week 2. He's still the one that I'd be looking at. He has always risen in price by 0.1. So if you only have 5.5, I don't mind Iwobi and I don't mind Adama Traore. The fixtures continue to look really nice. And just because you've missed the goal in game week 2, where they did play Leicester at home, I wouldn't let that put you off either. They've got 2 home games in the next 3 against West Ham and Newcastle, who don't look fully up to speed yet either. Ipswich away in game week 3. The data is good enough. The attacking returns are there at 5.5 million with the fixtures you can have every single week. Smith-Rowe's in my team, and I have absolutely no issue with him and no plans on moving him out. Love him at 5.6. And then continuing on at Fulham. Now, Rodrigo Muniz was a very popular Dominic Solanke replacement going into game week 2, and he did blank, but he took 7 shots in that game week 2 fixture against Leicester. He continues to look really good. 0.41 XGI per 90. Of course, he didn't get that many chances against Manchester United, and he did look good against Leicester in game week 2. I wouldn't let that put you off if you are looking for a forward. I still think that Muniz is a really nice option. Yes, he's not playing 90 every week. We are seeing some minutes for Jimenez every game in about the 70th, 75th, 80th minute, but I still like him. The fixtures are there. He's still focal to what Fulham are offering. If you don't have a Smith-Rowe and you are looking for a forward to potentially bring in, yes, the returns haven't been there, but the whole point of FPL is trying to predict when the points are going to come. He's predicted almost 4 points per 90 minutes, which is really reliable from the Fantasy Football Scout memories there. Again, check that out in the description if you do want to have a look at some players yourself. The next 4 fixtures do look really nice. Again, if you're looking for a forward at a cheap price, you can't get up to a Watkins, you can't get up to a Havertz or something like that. I still think he's one of my favourite to buy. And then finally talking about Ollie Watkins. Now, Watkins was a player who a lot of us didn't go with going into the start of the season in the end, but the fixtures start to look really nice. A little bit concerned about his minutes though. He's only played 60 minutes in both of the games, and I'm not certain he looks fully up to speed. However, after game week 3, there is the international break, and then from game week 4 onwards, I think we'll see the Ollie Watkins of old come back and return and look really good. And I think he'll be very popular from game week 4 onwards. Some people will look from game week 3, but people might be put off by the minutes a little bit. I do think he'll have a good run of form, and I think he'll start scoring goals very soon. So a lot of people going in on game week 4, and if he does well in game week 3 against Leicester, which is absolutely possible, he'll be a bandwagon. So trying to get on him a week earlier is absolutely something I do advise if you have the money to go and do. Would I do Alexander Isak to Ollie Watkins? If you've got nothing else to do in your team, I absolutely don't mind it as a punt, and it is something that I'd consider if I had a luxury transfer and didn't have a Christopher Nkunku problem to try and fix in my team. So slightly concerned about the minutes we've seen. 60 minutes in both. He doesn't look fully up to speed, but as I said, from game week 4 onwards, I do like what I can see from him. I do like him as a potential option. And then you can just punt on him a week earlier, given that it is Leicester away. So you do have a cheaper option in the likes of Morgan Rogers, who's just a cheap, sort of slightly safer, less risky pick because of how much you're spending on him. But if Ollie Watkins finished either of those chances against Arsenal, I think we'd all be looking at trying to get him in game week 3 anyway. So don't let that finishing put you off. We know he can score goals, and I do expect the goals to come if you can get up to him for 9 million. So those are some transfer targets. We've gone goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards. We've done the lot. Let me know any players I haven't included, potentially a Cole Palmer. It's difficult for a lot of us to go and get to him, though. I do like him. You could get a cheaper Noni Madueke, as we discussed. Any players that I haven't mentioned or anyone in here that you don't like, drop it all in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. There will be other videos. My team selection will be out very shortly as well. Thank you for the support that we're seeing on the channel as well. Have a lovely rest of your week, and I'll see you again very soon.